So you should be seeing a notification telling you that this session is being recorded. I hope everybody can see it.
Yes, ma'am, I can see it.
Okay, perfect. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for another session of our lecture. But before we even move into it, I've been having questions via email from students because there's some sort of uncertainty with regards to the pathways and how we go about this. So I think it will make sense. Let me share my screen quickly to the Moodle site. Okay, what's happening? Okay. Just hold on. Just one action. Stop sharing. Okay, share again. I'm trying to share the Moodle site. Okay, let me try and find it. Ah, there it is. All right, so I hope everybody can hear, which is great. I think it's very important that even before we just get into lectures, I mean, at the end of the day, what I was going to do today is actually scheduled for Monday. So it doesn't matter whether we get to start it today or not. But very importantly, guys, I want us to watch the Dean's message. I don't know if some of you have watched it, but I think it would be very good because almost all of us are supposed to make sure that you have a good understanding with regards to the pathway. Okay, so I'm going to just start this from the very beginning. Now, Prof. Van Wyk is... All right, so Prof. Van Wyk is the dean, of course, and so I want us to watch this video so that we can understand what the faculty is doing with regards to the various paths, and then I will explain it to you in terms of our module, because I think a lot there's one or two students very confused about whether if you write a test now, will you get an opportunity to write another test in the future? If you pathway one here, can you the whole lot? So let's rather hear it from our head, that's the dean, and then from there I'll try and clarify whatever questions you may have.
Ma'am, there's no audio to the video.
Excuse me?
There's no audio.
Is there no audio?
Yeah.
All right, let's see how to fix that. Well, I have audio on my side. I've paused it right now. Let's see more options. Turn off incoming video. Turn on live caption. Show background effects. Enter for show meeting notes. Show device settings. Oh, guys, I really have no idea why it's not. You can't hear it. All right, are you guys all able to view that video on your own in the next few minutes, and then when you finish, we can discuss it, because it's very important we do that. That's actually one of the things we have to do this week in order to explain the various options. Can you guys do it on your own by clicking on the video?
Yes, ma'am, I did send that same video on the group a while back.
Great. Okay, so has everybody watched the video though? Because
I doubt it.
okay, so my dear students, can you please watch the video that Zara has put on the WhatsApp group? We need to discuss it because you need to understand the options, the options available, yes, and the pathway. Because as far as my understanding is, there are students that have not been able to log on or to connect remotely due to internet connection and the whole lot. But now, will such students still form part of Pathway 1, or will they be Pathway 2? you guys doing pathway 1, are you going to be able to join pathway 2 in the future, that kind of thing. So I need you to watch the video and then just let me know, signal, give me a thumbs up as soon as you finished.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
I don't know if this suggestion can work. I was just thinking if maybe Zara plays the video on computer and just unmutes the mic, then we can hear the audio. I don't know. It's just a suggestion.
Okay, whichever way you want to do it, but we need to discuss the pathways. Whichever way is easy for you. Are you guys using cell phones to connect to this lecture, or laptops?
Cell phones.
Cell phones. Okay.
Or I can do it from my side. I can play it, and I can do it from my side. I can play it, and.
Okay, whatever you have to do, you can do it, so long as everybody gets to understand what's going on.
Ma'am, I'm hearing a echo.
Me too, Zara.
Online, so that we can provide priority to students with no limited internet access.
Ma'am, how does that sound?
Allowed to return to campus.
It's much better. I can hear.
Should I just restart the video and press play and then let everyone listen?
Just hold on. So, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to start the video from the beginning, and then Alex, with your audio, you can carry on so everybody can hear. Will that be okay? Is that a plan? Who am I speaking to now?
I think it's yeah, I think that's correct. Tristan can play it and you play it at the same time.
Okay, so it's Tristan. Okay, Tristan, so on the 3rd, we press play, right? So 1, 2, 3, go.
Hello. I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering, Built Environment and Technology. And the purpose of this communication is to reach out to students and to alert them about the measures plans to assist them to complete the 2020 academic year. These are unprecedented times that require us all to work together to ensure the completion of your studies. Our students come from diverse backgrounds, carrying the aspirations of their families and communities. It's therefore important to us to provide the necessary support to ensure that those dreams and aspirations are realized. As articulated, unless we take these difficult measures now, the corona pandemic will engulf and ultimately consume our country. As a university and faculty, we are acutely aware that not all our students will be able to resume with work at the same time in the same manner due to the inequalities we face as a country, and we don't want to leave any student behind. To make this reality, there will be 2 learning pathways. The aim of having 2 pathways is to provide all students with an opportunity to finish the first semester and the 2020 academic year. Since there is a high probability that physical distancing measures will be in place when students are allowed to return to campus, we might not be able to have and conduct lectures in the usual way. We might, for example, have to stream lectures and have small multiple face-to-face tutorial sessions. You might imagine how difficult this might be administratively. We therefore want to encourage and equip as many students as possible to start online so that we can provide priority to students with no limited internet access and students are allowed to return to campus. For pathway 2 to work, we hope that all the students having access to devices and the internet embrace pathway 1. This will allow us to make the necessary resources available to those students that are on pathway 2. The most important thing to take note of is that the two pathways cover exactly the same work. We will do our best to ensure that no one is left behind. Lecturers have been requested to take stock of the work that is left and decide what is critical to meet the professional body and other requirements. The remaining work for the semester has therefore been divided into a number of units spanning a 6-week period. For each unit, there will be an outline on the The outline will look as shown, but will contain the same information. For those on pathway, essential components will also be made available on email and or communicated piecewise in a WhatsApp group for the module. Note that the first semester test and previous work done before the lockdown will be incorporated in your final mark. How this will be done will be determined by your department and your lecturer. You will not be allowed to participate in the end of the module assessment if all your unit assignments have not been submitted. To calculate your final mark, for example, the unit assessments and the semester test might weigh 40% and the end of module assessment 60%. The end of module assessment might take a variety of forms, which will be determined by a specific situation or module. Some modules will have a practical or lab component, which you will only be able to complete when back on campus. For such modules, you will have to pass both the theory and the lab and practical units. We are now starting to engage with students on both pathways. A question you might have is whether students may switch pathways. The answer is yes, but there will be conditions governing this, and these will be communicated to you by your department. When will pathway 2 learners be allowed to return? We simply do not know at this stage. What we can assure you of is that you will be able to finish the 2020 academic year, even if it's split over to 2021. Up to the 27th of April, the department lecturers will start making contact with you through email. WhatsApp and email groups will be set up to communicate and disseminate information. Please make sure that you update your contact information on the NMU website. If you don't do this, we might not be able to reach you. Up to the 3rd of May, we will assist you to choose a learning path, and there will be onboarding on management. On the 4th of May, we will officially start with learning to complete the first semester. Keep in mind that since the pandemic remains fluid, it remains fluid. I'm sure that at this stage, you have more questions than answers. Therefore, please visit mandela.ac.za for more detailed explanations on the pathways, the principles, and answers to frequently asked questions.
Did you hear all right there, ma'am?
Yes, I heard everything. Did everybody else hear?
Yes, we did.
Okay, awesome. All right. So basically, okay, you can put your mic off now. Thank you. All right, guys. So basically, what's important is that if you're all here, it means you've decided to choose pathway 1 as opposed to pathway 2. I do know that when I sent out the survey, there were students that indicated, somebody's mic is on, please put it off. Some of the students indicated that they are, they have internet access, they have all of that, but they just don't feel comfortable learning like this. You know, they just, it wasn't personal. They just felt it would be extremely difficult, and as such opted for pathway 2. So nothing stops you from choosing each option, but since we don't really know where COVID-19 is going to take us, whether it will end tomorrow, which is highly unlikely, or the next month, or whatever the case is, we just crossing fingers that it will be over sooner than later. So the advice is that try as much as possible to use the online platforms. I do know that a lot of students, many rather, don't have access, and we will, as a department, get to decide, or we will we'll make plans on how to reach such students. Whether I personally would like to, I don't know, whether get to print out some of the slides and have it couriered, if the courier services will work and things like that. But in all fairness, we can't do any of these things if you don't update your information, your cell phone numbers, and all of those things. If we can't reach you, or you can't reach us, it will be very difficult to send you information. But as much as the pathways are concerned, even with regards to tests, like for example, now you've all chosen to be on pathway 1, and that's why we are on an online session. That means when we have our test on the 14th or so of May, you are all expected to, write the test, or to, sit the test, whether it's a multiple choice thing, or if we're lucky and some sort of miracle happens and this whole thing is over, we get to write a normal test. But the guys that are in pathway 2, when we get to that point where they join us, they will obviously write a different test, even though the test will cover the same content, but it wouldn't be fair to give them the same test. I mean, for integrity and all of that. So it's not as if just because a student is in pathway 2 and is not joining us now, they're not going to have a mark for the semester, or they're not going to have a mark at the end of the year. You must bear in mind that our modules are year modules. So whether we put a mark on now or in a month or 2 or whatever the case is, we can still put marks on. But what's important is that irrespective of the pathway, each student will get the opportunity to finish the semester or the year, because we don't know when this pandemic will actually come to an end. Zara, I'm not sure if I have answered, because we had a discussion about this yesterday. Did I clarify?
Yes, you did.
Okay. But the rest of the students, is there any question regarding these pathways that you'd want me to specifically look at or talk about?
Yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry, ma'am. Okay. Good day, ma'am. I just heard that.
Who am I speaking to? Introduce yourself, huh?
Okay, speaking to Nongoliso Jeannie, the girl who usually sits by the switch.
Oh, I know your voice, of course. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
You look like one of my first years of last year.
Yes, I remember you did mention.
Okay.
Ma'am, see, now the thing is, I opted for pathway 2 because it seemed like it wouldn't be a problem, because I do have the data, the network is okay. But then now, since we've started on the 28th, I've seen that I'm really not coping with this way, because, for example, with QS, with DPE, like most times I'm just behind. So yes, I do have the resource, but I don't think I'd be able to meet the requirements, given the fact that I'm studying from home, and like this distance thing, I'm not catching up as much as I usually would have been able to.
Okay. Tell me something, for something theoretical, like remember, concrete is very much, yesterday, I'm not sure if you joined in yesterday, where I mentioned that, look, for now, we're not doing any calculations as yet. And even the soil analysis will not be part of the test. We'll deal with it at a later stage. But for now, seeing that concrete is theoretical and it's a theory, it's a theory-based module, and the content is very much a read, understand, and apply. Would you have a problem with concrete if we take it forward?
No, I don't think I would have a problem with concrete specifically, but if that's the case for all of my modules, then I don't think that I still want to be part of pathway 1. Because with concrete, with this module, I've already started studying forward, but then it wasn't a problem. But with the others, it's basically a thing of I can't do anything.
Is it because it's calculation based? Is that what is making it difficult?
Yes.
Okay,
yes,
can you do me a favor? All right, can you do me a favor? Can you send an email to me, and everything that you've said now, just write it down nicely, then I'll forward it to the HOD and get it forwarded to the dean. Because you see, if we didn't have this discussion, I would not have known. Are you with me? Right? That's why it's very important. We are doing this. It's a new thing. It's new for me. I don't even know how to do volume for the screen thing. We had to now, Tristan had to come up with now an interesting plan to get the volume done. We are all in this nightmare together. So don't ever feel as if it's just you being unique in whatever stress that you're in. It happens to me as well. I was in a meeting earlier on whereby the meeting just cut off. You know, they had to resend an invitation. And by the time they came back, I mean, a whole 30 minutes had gone by. So the reality is that this is not easy. It's quite challenging for all of us. I do understand the situation. And if you feel that after testing pathway 1, you feel like this is not for you, because everybody has a learning strength. Everybody knows. I was explaining to Zara sometime when I had a conversation with her that I have two sisters. One has been able to complete a degree with UNISA. The other one needs contact time. Now, the two individuals, if I switch the one that needs contact time with the UNISA, she's not going to pass, because that's not how she learns. She's currently struggling and very stressed out about this online thing because she doesn't even know where to begin. She's used to having a lecture in front of her. She takes notes, she understands, she walks out. The other one, if she's in a lecture with a lecturer standing in front of her, she gets bored, she plays on her phone, she watches movies, she learned nothing. But on her own, with UNISA online, she's able to study. So it is real, and it's understandable that students learn in different ways. So whichever learning strength that you have, you need to use that to decide the pathway that you want to follow. So my advice will be that send me an email, just write down everything that you said, talk about the DPE, is it DPE pricing estimating, talk about the QS, talk about the theory modules, and obviously the ones that are calculations in nature, and then explain that you thought pathway 1 would be great, but all of a sudden you're feeling uncomfortable, and give the reason for being uncomfortable, so that when we discuss it at a department level, we can let the powers that be, when I said the powers that be, I'm talking about all the people that are above me, we can let them know the challenges of students. Because if I don't send this information to my HOD cannot send it to the dean cannot now send it to the VC. Are you with me? So in order for us to get to a point where we can assist as much as possible, this kind of information needs to come out. So ideally, just send me an email and then I'll take it further. I'll just forward it to Mr. Dry, and then he will obviously advise accordingly. But these are the two options, and irrespective of which one you decide to follow, the year will still be finished. We'll do whatever it is to make sure that the year will be finished. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, ma'am. It does. But then I just want to know, like, will I still be forced to write the test that is expected of every pathway 1 student to write?
Look, if you choose not to do pathway 1, then what's the point of doing a test? So if you're going to choose pathway 2, then you do the test. Because remember, you cannot, so this is something that I really don't know, and I'm not too sure, and I would try and find out. I'm not sure whether you can choose, maybe for one module, choose a pathway 1, and another module, choose a pathway 2. It's not, as far as I've understood, those options are not available. It's more like if you choose a pathway, that pathway is the method of learning for the entire program that you are registered for. So it means if you choose pathway 1 now, all your modules you're registered for will be going the pathway 1 direction. And if you choose pathway 2, then also you wouldn't have the option of picking and choosing which pathway for specific modules. I haven't understood it to be like that.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Does it answer you?
Yes, it does. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So now if you decide to carry on with pathway 1, then we will carry on when we do our lectures, we carry on with our lectures. We'll do the, when I upload assignments, even with assignments as I was discussing, I'm open to new ideas. I'm even thinking of assignments where you actually answer or, do the assignment on an audio, you record what you're saying and you send it to me. That suffices. I mean, that's the best. It's better than just writing and reading stuff. I'll just be hearing it. And then I can also give comments back using the same method. I can record the comments for each student and send it back, that kind of thing. We are, at this point, it's not a one size fits all. In fact, there's no size, there's no shoe. Nobody knows what is happening. We're just taking it a day at a time. But we're trying as much as possible to be flexible to the point that we encourage the learning, the teaching and learning, and then we also encourage students to do the best they can. But the realities out there are evident. We know the challenges, and that's why there's 2 pathways. So irrespective of the one you choose, the year will be finished somehow, some way we'll get it done. Is there any other question? Noncedo, are you here? I got an email from Noncedo earlier that she was struggling to connect with Teams. Now, this Teams thing is not free. However, it's almost like it's the only, not just Teams, even if we used Zoom or the other video conferencing platforms, it gives almost like an idea as if we are in a lecture venue. I don't know if you guys can feel it. The only difference is we're all sitting in front of a computer or using a smartphone or whatever the case is. Now, the reason why I opted for something like this is because this is more personal. It would be worse if you just had a video that you had to watch, notes that you have to read, and that's about it. I thought that using Zoom rather gives the opportunity for this kind of interaction. You can stop me anytime. You can ask a question. You can, request me to go back to something. But the reality is that it's not cheap. I did hear from 1 or 2 students that Telkom, Telkom or Telkom or one and some other network providers are giving free data. So with regards to data, for those of you that are struggling with data or connectivity, I would advise if you can get a Telkom SIM card. Whenever the lockdown, we're allowed to move around a bit. I mean, we can go to stores and buy things, but I'm not sure whether the cell phone shops are opened. If you can get your hands on any of these free data, then I suppose connectivity wouldn't be that of a problem. But I also do understand that depending on where you are, the network carriers themselves, the tower or the signal is very bad. So that is also a challenge. And these are all the things that you need to consider if you, in terms of the pathways that you decide to follow. Is there anything else? If you have a question, you can type it in. Yes. Sorry.
Sorry again. It's Nongoliso again, ma'am.
Okay.
Now I just to comment on the whole lecture, like it feels as though we're in a lecture whole thing. The thing is, I think that having like separate videos would actually help. Like maybe we get a video before the actual lecture where the lecturer is just doing the work and explaining it throughout, and then we have a lecture on this team thing, so that but because by then we'll have gotten all the things that we don't understand. So that way we spend less time on Teams, because sometimes you find that you do have a question, or maybe you don't understand something, but because if you interrupt while the lecturer is still talking, then you might cause a breakage in communication, you see. So I think it would be better maybe if we got videos sent to us first, like those YouTube things, like, yeah, I don't know if everyone has seen it, but, and then we have a lecture after that, like in this form, where people come forward with their questions, and then we get answered based on those. I don't know, it's just a suggestion.
All right. So anyway, with I'm not going to comment about other lecturers, but for myself, what I've decided to do is that every single week I release the activities for that week. So the lecture for that week, you'll have it. So like right now, if I can, I wonder if I can show you guys. Let's see. Stop sharing. Okay, so I can share. Here we are. Let's go back to Moodle. All right, so now this was the introductory week where we looked at the lecture and we did the review of test 1, which was the summary of chapter 1 to 2. So this, what was done is available to you. Now, in actual fact, the first lecture in terms of this online thing is supposed to start next week, which is from the 4th or so, or Monday until the 8th of May. So all the information, the resources will be available. So what you would actually do then is to read it ahead of time. When you read it ahead of time, you have questions, you watch the videos ahead of time, you know, then you can ask questions, so that now when we do the lecture, if you have questions, we can answer the questions, or ideally you can send your questions through beforehand after watching the videos. So for example, this lecture week 1 would be released, should be released right now, so that you can actually have the entire weekend. You can have the entire weekend to, you know, to review it, to go over it, and so on and so forth. But I mean, this is the kind of methodology that I've decided to follow. I'm not sure how the other, especially the lectures with calculations are planning to show. The lectures with calculations are planning to go about their modules. So with mine, right now you can all view lecture week 1, so that you can pre-read before we actually start. The videos are linked, and I'll occasionally keep on adding some more videos just to help you in terms of the explanation of each of the chapters. So in actual fact, it puts you in a position of coming to the lecture prepared for lessons. But if you decide on whichever pathway, you've got to consider that the entire lecture will be covered in any case. So if it's a 1-hour lecture, whatever the case is, the lecture will happen. So if you run out of data or whatever the case is, the recording then will be made available and you can watch it. Now, lecturers like myself, the reason why I don't want to do a pre-recording is because I prefer that while I am lecturing, if you have a question, you stop me so I can explain, because explaining it to one person benefits everyone else. There's no point in now just answering questions individually and then nobody gets to benefit. But what happens is that, of course, day after, whatever the recording for that particular lecture, once it's done, it gets sent to the group, or it will be put on Moodle. I'll upload them on Moodle eventually, but normally it will be sent on WhatsApp for easy viewing, so that you can all just benefit from it. So whether it's pre-recorded or not, it doesn't matter. As soon as the lecture is over, you get it. But having access to the material before a lecture is vitally important for you to go through it. So noted. I mean, for my module, that's how I'm going to operate. I don't know about the others. So if you plan to continue with pathway 1, I would advise that you contact the lecturers concerned and maybe request that information be released prior to the lecture so that you can go over it. But I think what would help is going over the recorded lecture. Because once you go over the recorded lecture, you have heard it, you've done the lecture with your lecturer. From there, you now know what you don't understand. Then you give feedback by sending an email that, okay, I did not understand X, Y, and Z. Can you repeat it in the next lecture? I think that actually makes more sense because for something like calculations, if you knew it, you wouldn't attend lecture. So having the information first before the lecture, I don't know how well that will help you. Maybe it will, but if that's how you want to operate, I think maybe just consult the lecturer is concerned. But for my module, this is how I'm going to operate. The information is available as of right now. For next week, you go through it, prepare, watch the videos before the lecture. I think that's how it's going to, that's how we will proceed in trying to make sure that nobody's left behind.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am.
All right. Is there any other question, guys?
Good day, ma'am. You're speaking to Nomta class, and I have a question.
Yes, Namta.
Yeah, ma'am. I think I saw that you mentioned in your emails that we will be having weekly assessments. So I was wondering if the assessments will start next week or this weekend.
No. Guys, so I said weekly assessment. That is wishful thinking. You know that you've known me from first year, that I try and target 100%, even though a 50 is a pass. So as much as I would want us to do assignments, right? The assignments will not be every week. It defeats the purpose. However, if I give an assignment, I will notify you. So if I intend to give you an assignment today, I will tell you guys, expect an assignment, and I will always give you enough time for an assignment. In fact, the assignments will be in such a way that it's some form of a preparation exercise for your tests. So it's not going to be assignments where you have to go crack your head and stuff like that. Having a textbook will suffice, or just watching videos and answering questions will suffice. Like I said, even in situations where a student cannot type, you can record your answers. So these are the kind of assignments that I'm looking at. I'm also trying to look at assignments where you actually go out, find videos on certain topics and send them to me, you know, that kind of thing. Or you watch a video on something and then you explain what you watched. So because these are all part of a learning experience. It's not just a matter of sitting and reading books the whole time, but you can read the book the whole time, but what have you learned really? And my interest is for you to understand and not necessarily you know, just memorize the textbook and rewrite it for me. So maybe in one way or another, this online thing might just open our eyes to new forms of assessments. So yes, I did write that we will have assignments, but the assignments, ladies and gentlemen, will not be every week. Firstly, it's going to be tedious. You have other modules to do as well. If I do it every week, we've got to think about how we're going to mark all of this. Okay, so I don't think it will be feasible. What I am going to consider though is that at the end of each chapter, I will give an assignment, and the assignment can either be just a quiz that you have to complete online, or a set of questions that you have to answer by recording the answers and sending them to me, that kind of thing. So we'll just play around with the options, but just expect at least an assignment after each chapter, or an assignment after a couple of chapters. Like an example, chapter 8, 9, and 10 are combined. So one assignment that covers all three. If you look at form work, reinforcement, and placing of concrete, that's chapter 16, chapter 13, chapter 12 or so. If you look at those chapters, they can be combined and put together, right? So as we get along after each chapter, or after a certain number of chapters, I'll put a quiz down for you, and that will suffice as a test. I mean, as an assignment.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am.
You're welcome, Namta. Anyone else? You don't have to be shy if you have a question, guys. It's very important that we have this discussion because you've got to understand what we're going into an unknown territories here. So if you have and there's no stupid question, please. If you have any question, ask. It's better you ask now than to be, in a stressful mode or whatever in the future. All right. So I assume there's no question since nobody is answering. Okay, so if there's no question, please. Yes?
I'd just like to say that the intrinsic properties of concrete, I think, it's fundamental. It's very important.
Say that again, Madolo.
I was saying the intrinsic properties of concrete. I think it's very important. Yes.
Yes.
So I think it's there's a lot.
Oh, are you trying to tell me that it's too much to learn, or it's very interesting? You want me to test you on it? You want to do an assignment on it? What are you trying to say?
I was trying to put across, ma'am, that it plays a big role in the structural integrity.
Definitely.
Of concrete structures. So I think even in industry, if you are aware of that, then you'll stop people from putting on water in your truck.
That's very true. That's very true. Thank you so much for your contribution. Of course, remember that if you, going back to what we covered yesterday, just when we got to chapter 8, 7 and 8, if you look at the properties of fresh concrete, what you do there has an influence and an impact on what you have in the hardened state. So if you're going to manipulate any of those properties, you're definitely going to have problems in the hardened concrete, which obviously now tends to become a deformation situation, or you can have, a concrete that is rejected later on, and so on and so forth. So, or a structure that is broken down later on due to the fact that maybe the tests fail, and the test will obviously fail if you did not pay much attention to the concrete in its fresh state, or even in the making of the concrete at that point. So it's vitally important for you to understand. I do know that when it comes to the intrinsic and extrinsic factors, in the past, and it's always been so, students hate that section because it's quite confusing and they are very similar to each other. But that is why we've decided on an extra 2 weeks of preparation for the test, and then instead of just rushing straight into it as soon as we start. So there's more time to at least go over it, and then make sure that you don't confuse yourself with any of the points. All right, so thank you so much, Madolo. If we're going to move ahead now, we are. So I assume that everybody has at least understood the pathways. If any of you still are not sure of something, just pop me an email and I'll endeavor to respond as soon as I can. All right, screen, what is happening? Okay, so let's see what's happening to the screen. Right. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now this is the first week of lectures. We're actually starting now. All right, of course, if you click on it, you'll see that it's a PDF copy of chapters 8, 9, and 10. But we both know that we've done we went all the way to chapter 8 up until the lockdown. So now we're going to have to just have a look at chapter 9. I don't know if any of you know, I think his name is Yaka. He's having problems. He doesn't have a textbook. I don't know how any of you can assist him. If you live near him or something like that, can you guys help by sharing a book? Or if you have it in PDF somehow, or you ended up scanning it, electronically, maybe you could email it to him, because I really cannot do it. I don't have the resources to scan anything here. So that would help him quite a bit because he's struggling without a textbook. All right, let me just go quickly to chapter 9. All right, so chapter 9 deals with the deformation of hardened concrete, and it's very much the same as what Madolo has just explained, that if you look at the intrinsic factors or of concrete, if we pay much attention to that, then of course we eliminate, or we try to reduce the impact those properties would have in the hardened concrete. So with regards to the deformation of hardened concrete, obviously being chapter 9, we're going to just look at the general terms associated with the deformation of hardened concrete. We'll have a look at the practical implications of deformation, and then of course some theoretical aspects. And then thereafter, we'll obviously have a look at durability of hardened concrete. Not today though, because we are just, starting this lecture. Now, in your mind, going back, you remember we always draw from our experiences on site, and all of those that worked on site. So what do you think deformation of hardened concrete is? What comes to mind when you think of deformation of hardened concrete? Anyone can give me a comment or anything like that? Nothing? All right, so when we look at the deformation of hardened concrete, all right, we look at concrete when it's hardened and how it ends up deforming from its original shape. So under which or under what circumstances would concrete deform? Now, we know that when we deal with concrete structures in building or in our course per se, we look at beams, we look at columns, we look at slabs, just specifically focusing on quantity surveying, but the concrete structures themselves. Now, if you look at beams, columns, slabs, under what conditions will they deform? What will cause them to deform? Once you have that understanding in mind, you shouldn't have a problem. All right. So when we look at deformation, either in columns or deformation in beams, right? If you have a column and it's subjected to load, it will deform in a certain way. So once the load is applied onto the column will start to become shorter, right? Because the load that is imposed on it crushes it. If you have beams and you have load imposed on the beam starts to sag. Hence, we have our, if you remember from first year when we did our shear forces and bending moment, looking at the moments in the beam where it starts to bend. And then also in slabs, depending on where the load is positioned, the slabs also start to bend. When loads are applied to hardened concrete, right, we also have cracking. So cracking is as a result of imposed load, but at the same time, there are a number of ways of reducing cracking or reducing the impact of cracking on hardened concrete. When we look at construction joints, so there are various types of joints though, but we look at joints in concrete, especially if you're looking at pavements, depending, or if you're looking at not necessarily, slabs, but or floors rather, even on our North Campus, on our way, if you're coming into the lecture venue, you'll see expansion joints on the floor, right? If you walk on the pavement, you'll see that there are, construction joints as well. So these all facilitate cracking, and it also now reduces this a bit or even prevents it from happening, because if the cracks do occur, then it occurs on the cut, on the particular hardened concrete, but we'll have a look at that specifically later. Now, deformation occurs in many ways. So in hardened concrete, deformation can occur as a result of load being imposed on the structure. And if load is imposed on the structure, you can have two things that happen. There's elasticity or elastic deformation, and then there's creep. All right, we're going to have a look at both of these type of load-induced deformations. Then you have load-independent deformations, which are deformations that occur without any load being imposed on it. So the name of the particular deformation is self-explanatory, and it will actually just tell you what the particular deformation is. Okay. Here in your textbook, I'm sure it should be figure 9.1. This was an older version, but I'm not sure if the figure is still the same. So we're looking at the deformation of hardened concrete, looking at what happens when load is imposed on concrete. When does the deformation happen? What happens in elastic situation? What happens in creep recovery? But before we even get into this explanation, I want us to watch, if I can go back, where am I? Creep in concrete. All right. I don't know if you can all see this. Can you?
Yes, we can, ma'am.
Okay, we'll just have to see if you can hear it. Oh, now I'm having slow internet. This is interesting. All right. All right, so in order for us to understand creep, we've got to look at concrete structures. We've got to look at, obviously, how they behave when loads are applied. Now, here is the problem. I don't know whether Tristan is going to have to do the same thing that we did earlier on, because you might not be hearing what I'm doing. Tristan, can you help? Hello, Tristan, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, are you sleeping?
No, sorry, I was just taking a photo of my mom. She's sleeping.
Oh, that's interesting. In the middle of a lecture. That's great.
Sorry, I went to go get water. I had...
No, it's fine. Okay, so we're about to watch a video, right? So I just want. I beg your pardon?
Which video is it, ma'am?
Okay, just hold on. Let me show you. It's the one on creep. Yes, creep in concrete.
There you go.
Okay, so basically, as soon as I press play, then you should do the same, and then so everybody can hear. You do the same as you did the earlier on.
Okay. When
so
you're ready.
All right, I'm ready now.
3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Hans, and I work here at BCAT that's responsible for the concrete lab and new product development. And in this video, I will be talking about creep in concrete. Creep is a tendency of a solid material to deform slowly over time under the influence of a constant load. We have all witnessed creep at some point when looking at, for instance, a bookshelf filled with textbooks. The fact that these shelves tend to sag over time is in fact creep. Creep is not limited to bookshelves though. On the contrary, any material will creep. Even steel will creep when exposed at very high temperatures. Concrete behaves differently because it will creep at any given temperature and at any stress level. When the load is placed on a concrete structure, it will immediately show an elastic deformation. When this load is sustained over time, the deformation will grow. This is what we call creep. This will happen quickly at first, and then gradually it will be slowing down. When the load is removed again, the concrete will spring back to some extent, and also some of the creep deformation will continue to return. This is what we call creep recovery. And part of the deformation is, however, irreversible. You can also look at creep from another point of view. When a loaded specimen is restrained so that it cannot deform, then the stress level in the specimen will gradually decrease. This is what we call relaxation. This effect shows that creep can be positive as well as negative. It can be undesirable when a structural reinforced beam is deflecting over time, but in a statically indeterminate structure like a slab on ground, the relaxation effect will relieve stress concentrations. There are many factors that can influence the creep of concrete, and I will highlight 2 of them in this video. In terms of the composition of the concrete mix, the cement paste is where all the creep occurs. The aggregates in the mixture, they will not creep, but when you use a stiffer aggregate, the resulting concrete will be more resistant to creep. Another important factor of influence is the amount of water in the cement paste. Concrete with a lower water to cement ratio, or a stronger concrete, will show less creep. And in addition, because concrete becomes stronger over time, it will creep less when you wait longer to put a load on. How does all of this relate to fiber reinforced concrete? Well, despite being around for more than half a century, nearly all research on fiber reinforced concrete has been focusing on the properties of the fresh state or on short-term mechanical properties. It's only very recently that long-term behaviors such as creep came to the attention of researchers. Most applications of fiber reinforced concrete are in statically indeterminate structures, which benefit from the relaxation effect. However, as creep can also increase crack openings and deflections over time, Model Code 2010 has acknowledged that creep should be taken into account when designing structural applications, but it doesn't offer any design guidelines or test standards. And the RILEM committee was established in 2014 to address this lack of guidelines. And together with the industry and university labs from all around the globe, BECAT is involved in this committee, and we hope to publish our findings by the end of this year. One thing has become clear in the study so far. There is a strong relation between the fiber material and the creep behavior of the fiber reinforced concrete. If the material of the fibers is prone to creep, then so will the resulting fiber reinforced concrete. If you are designing an application where you absolutely do not want any creep at all, then you're better off using steel fibers because they will greatly reduce the effects of creep. If you have any questions related to this topic, please let them know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tristan. Okay, so let's go back. Are we running out of time now? Okay, are you back?
I'm back, ma'am. Yeah.
All right. Okay, welcome back.
I'm yeah. Just leave. Another video.
No.
Go ahead.
I am looking for I'm looking for the lecture right now. Where is it? All right, so we're looking at this. Wow, we have just 2 minutes left. Okay, I think should we end here? I think we should. Half-past. Okay, so basically, if you look at this diagram is illustrating what happens to hardened concrete under subjected load. So there you have the load. All right. In this immediate elastic, what happens is that as the load is removed, the structure almost like bounces back. It's almost like having an elastic band. When you stretch it, once you put it back, it goes back to normal. So as the load is removed from or released from the hardened concrete, right, the concrete structure almost like bounces back, so it becomes very much elastic. And then as the load is obviously increased, right, then we have creep again. So the structure starts to deform. If the structure falls under in an unloaded situation, all right, again we have the bounce back, and then we have a situation where there's a recovery in creep. So though it does not deform as much, it starts to gradually should I say, undeform. So there's a little bit of a recovery in terms of the deformation of the particular structure. So if you look at something like a beam, once you place a load on that beam, the load on the beam causes the beam to bend. If you release the load, right, the beam will attempt to recover and, you know, get back into its original shape. That would be the elasticity or the elastic deformation that we're talking about. If you look at something like pavements even, or even floor slabs, if you place very big equipment onto a slab, once the equipment is removed, after a while, you'll see that there's a bit of a liftment of the surface. So though there'll be a dent or some sort of deformation, it will almost like start to recover by itself, though it will not get to its original shape. Even though this isn't necessarily something that you should worry too much about, what is important is just understanding the load deformations, which is obviously our creep and our elastic deformation for this. So figure 9.1 isn't something that you should actually worry too much about at all. It's just a matter of illustrating what creep is. But again, if you watch it in the video for the second time, you'll get to understand it slightly more. Practical application of deformation. Now, if we look at, like I've just explained now with regards to the beams, either the columns and so on. So if you have a column and you apply load on it, the column may become shorter or it will start to buckle. When it starts to buckle, it will obviously start to deform from the side. So it will buckle either to one side or to the other side. And a typical example is window frames. When load is imposed on the frame, it starts to, the sides of the frame starts to deform outwards. I don't know if any of you have actually seen that before on a construction site, especially when the loads are imposed on the door frames without any lintel whatsoever. If you don't have a lintel, then the load or the brickwork that is on top of the frame tends to make the frame deform, right? So that's a typical example there. If you look at columns whereby there are tiles on the columns, you can also have a little bit of deformation because the tiling isn't fixed smoothly to the tile, so it's slightly rigid. And if it's slightly rigid, the tiles start to fall off because of the load that is imposed on it. So you have a column with tiles. As the load is imposed on it, the tiling starts to obviously break off due to the imposed load. If you do tiling, you know that you have your grouting, and then the bonding between the surface of the column and obviously the tile. If that bond is ineffective, it will fall off. But as load is imposed on it, the pressure, the weight, the load causes the tiles to fall off. I think it's almost like when you imagine it, you can actually see it. Masonry walls tend to, impose, well, if you have walls on top of a slab, as an example, or walls underneath a slab, so depending on the load of the slab, you can have some sort of cracking in the masonry wall. If you have a masonry wall and you have roof covering, so if you don't have a wall plate, okay, all around it, the load of the roof structure tends to cause the masonry, the wall to crack a bit. So these are typically examples of situations where you have deformation in hardened concrete. Now, how do we prevent this from happening? We know that we're not structural engineers. I think I've told you that this many times. We are builders. We build, we quantify. So someone else designs. So it's very important that the designers of these structures design it with integrity. So from the design stage already, it's very important for any structural engineer to do the necessary load analysis. And that should be done by a competent person. And then also the person that is building it needs to be competent. You don't want a fly-by-night contractor that does not actually know how to build or construct a building, because workmanship is important. If the people building it or the people putting a structure together don't have the technical expertise to put the structure together, they might, do it incorrectly, or and this obviously will contribute to the deformation of the structure. But if we use well-experienced people, if the designers give specific details on how these concrete structures are supposed to be fixed, then any competent person with experience can actually fix them. Right, moving forward. So creep and elastic are load dependent. Okay, now we're going to have a look at load independent, which means that we're looking at deformation whereby no load is involved. Dry shrinkage is one of them. Now, dry shrinkage is, or rather, who can tell me what dry shrinkage is? Hydration, water, temperature. This is where we look at extrinsic factors. We look at the factors outside of the concrete, right, that affect its properties. So when we look at something like dry shrinkage, right, what about the concrete makes it shrink? What factors make it shrink? So basically, if you look at concrete structures or any concrete element, firstly, it's in its fresh state, and then you cast it with formwork and all of that, and then the concrete is left to cure. Sorry. The concrete is left to cure and to harden. So if the concrete loses moisture excessively, what happens is that the the concrete starts to shrink. All right. So in the hydration process, we either look at the methods of hydration, we look at temperature, we look at humidity, because all of these have an influence on whether that concrete will shrink. And even if it does shrink, to what degree does it shrink? Sometimes if concrete shrinks too fast, we also have a situation where you have air bubbles as well. If the concrete hydrates too quickly, it loses a lot of its water, which means then that the water cement ratio is influenced or it's affected. Now, the effect of shrinkage on structures is that, of course, the structure becomes smaller than it is. So if you had a 1 meter structure, all of a sudden you have what, 950 millimeters. So it reduces in size. The reduction may not be so significant that you can see, but I mean, if you took a tape measure and you actually measured it, you could see the effect of shrinkage. Sometimes shrinkage obviously causes the joint, the construction joints, to become slightly wider than they should. The reason why they become wider is because the concrete shrinks and becomes smaller. So instead of having maybe as an example, a 1 millimeter construction joint, you all of a sudden have 3 or 2.5 or 3 millimeters, which means that now it's actually becoming wider and wider because the concrete is, or the size of the concrete element or structure is becoming smaller. Another adverse effect is the fact that the concrete cracks. But with cracking, we know that as the concrete shrinks, we have cracking. But to control something like cracking, then we need movement joints, we need construction joints and all of that. Again, a good detailed design is important by a structural engineer, mixing the concrete very well using a proper mix. If there are temperature variations, of course, we've got to take into consideration the water cement ratio. We've also got to look at the process of curing and how that structure is actually allowed to cure, the method of curing, either having spraying water on it or using the plastic sheeting to cover it. So the curing method is also very important. All right, so with regards to shrinkage, have a good understanding of what shrinkage is, the effects of shrinkage, and how to control it. That's about it. Okay, this is the end of today. I will see you on Monday. I think I've gotten 1 minute over the time.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.
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 Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Clausen, are you there? Hello, Clausen, are you there? I think you tried to call me.
Yes, I am.
You tried to call me today.
No, I think it was just me fiddling with this thing, trying to find out how all these things work. Yeah.
Is it? No problem.
Oh, yeah.
I'm also I'm in the same boat. Okay, we're all learning from this.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's okay. Cool. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Bye, guys.
Ma'am, just before you go,
Yes.
don't you think it's advisable just to leave the option open for us to write messages or questions? Because I checked here the whole time that privilege has also been revoked. Or is that one of the privileges which...
Oh, you want to be able to, you mean like now, if you want to ask me a question?
No, I just checked on it.
No, you can send me. You can send me. Like if you want to write me, or during the lecture, you mean?
I mean during the lecture, yeah.
During the lecture, you can use the chat. That's that chat option where you put in questions so I can read it.
It actually doesn't work. I open that thing now. That's just a message within the... Yes, you are not permitted to post the chat.
Because oh, is it saying so? Okay,
yes,
I'll just check. So. Okay, I'll check next time.
Okay.
Just remind me when we have the lecture on Monday to unset it.
Okay. Will you post the invite again, or will it just follow the same timetable?
So on Monday I'll follow the timetable. The reason why I changed this one is because I had a meeting this morning that I couldn't cancel.
Okay. No problem.
Yeah. All right.
No problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Sign out, guys. I'm waiting for you all to sign out. Leaving. Sign out. Leaving. Thank you. Leave. Okay, see you on Monday.